Welcome to episode 4 of Nostalgic Pixel. I'm Brian. In this episode, we're going to be looking at Super Mario Bros. 2. This game has a unique origin story. Growing up, this was my Super Mario Bros. 2. I really enjoyed it. As different as this game was, it still felt like a Super Mario game to me. Going back now, I find it refreshing to the series. This game also helped introduce many enemies that we know today in the Mario games, like Bob-ombs and Shy Guys. It also helped introduce the characteristics of Mario, Luigi, Toad, and the Princess. So let's take a look at Super Mario Bros. 2, the origin, and the versions that followed. Back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for sequels to change things up a bit, so not to be so much of a rinse and repeat. Two examples of the time would be Castlevania to Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, and Nintendo's own Legend of Zelda to Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. With Zelda 2, that game must have been completed in Japan well before its US release. I remember having this thing in Nintendo Player's Guide, and this was even before the game was even out yet. In fact, me and my friends noticed Zelda 2 in early Nintendo foldouts included with very many early released Nintendo games. Sequels were early enough not to be stuck in a mold yet. I also think game developers like Miyamoto were still testing things out and eager to try new things. I had an NES early and it didn't come with Super Mario Bros. It came with Gyromite and Duck Hunt. Super Mario Bros. Was a game I had to go out and discover with my friends. We had so much fun playing this game. I remember I would go over to my friends' houses and they would show me the 100 lives trick. When Super Mario Bros. 2 came out, it was a big deal. Nearly all my friends picked this up shortly after it came out. It was so cool that it was different. But graphically speaking, it was a bit more advanced and interesting. Lots of variation in the levels and the gameplay was different. Being able to play as Mario, Luigi, Toad, and the Princess was a nice change. The sprites began to closely resemble the drawings of the characters more accurately. I liked that the game was just a dream. I thought it was cool that they didn't mess with the King Koopa story but had its own thing. Hard to believe that it could have been a Super Mario Bros. Game without Bowser these days. The Princess is a very popular player to pick because of her useful floating jump that can benefit the player by giving them extra time to confirm the landing on their jump and also give them extra distance. Luigi is cool because he can jump high and keep a long air time, not quite like the Princess though. Mario is an all-around average player, and Toad is fast at running and picking up things, but he's not very gifted when it comes to jumping. I liked playing as Toad though. It was nice to be able to pick up items fast and throw them at your enemies. No more hitting things to your head this time around. It was all about pick up and throw. This was a major change in the Mario games and one that was not repeated. I always find myself heading straight to the warp zones. I know I'm missing out on levels and sometimes I will play it straight. I just remember growing up I think it was more of a it's my turn to play, let me hurry up and play so my friend can play next. So we were just taking turns and it seemed like the faster route was always the way we take it. Growing up it was fun to discover and share warp zones with my friends. Also at the time Nintendo Power came out and this was the first magazine and had Super Mario Bros. 2 on the cover. I was already a member of Nintendo's Fun Club, the Nintendo magazine that predated the Nintendo Power. The Nintendo Power was a must for NES owners like me at the time. There was no N64.com then. Oftentimes, these magazines included guides that really helped you get into the game. Some games, this proved almost necessary. Sometimes these games were programmed poorly and you'd get a message like I am error, and then other times villagers would straight out lie to you, or the translation was so bad the cryptic messages were impossible to decipher. It wasn't until years later on the Super Nintendo with the release of Mario All-Stars that we got to find out more and play what was Super Mario Bros. 2 in Japan. Sold to us as lost levels, All-Stars was a great proposition. Here are 4 great Super Mario Bros. Games, and now one of the earliest remakes with 16-bit graphics. Also, the Super Nintendo wasn't backwards compatible of any kind without any adapter that was readily available at the time. Sega had, for the Genesis, the power-based converter to play Master System games. I was most excited to play Super Mario Bros. 3 in 16-bit, as I didn't get it when it originally came out. We also got this new Mario game that was never released outside of Japan. We all jumped into lost levels and found out really soon that it was very challenging. The Super Mario Bros. 2 that was originally released in Japan was designed by a different team than the first one. The thinking behind this game was you want to continue where you left off with the first, meaning why would you want to play Super Mario Bros. 2 if you hadn't beaten Super Mario Bros. 1 yet? So it starts you off in World 1, but it is really more like World 9. Also, now being able to play the games like Mario Maker, you can really see the tools that they probably were thinking about, or at least the primitive versions of the ones they were having when they designed this game, because you can see that these levels and the jumps and everything required almost near perfect execution. This game was released on the Famicom Disk System. Nintendo was quick to move their games over to this add-on, and also quick to take them off. The benefits of the Famicom Disk System was that space was cheaper and players could save their progress. Also in Japan, you could go to vending machines and buy games and have them saved right onto the floppy disk, and if you wanted a new game, you could bring the disc back and have it rewritten with a new game on it. Originally, over time though, memory for carts became cheaper and putting batteries in carts to save games became practical. The Famicom Disk System never made it outside of Japan. One thing to keep in mind though, there was no rental market for video games in Japan, so the Famicom Disk System made it a nice way to try out games affordably. Visually, Super Mario Bros. 2 in Japan looks nearly identical to the first. This was thought of to be as a hard sell for consumers in the US. The US was still recovering from the crash in the early 80s, and Nintendo, although they have revived the market, they were cautious not to trigger the crash again. So you gotta remember, a lot of the times, we were sold on a screenshot of a game, and if a screenshot looks just like a screenshot of a game you already played, oftentimes you'll overlook it, as in you just say, I've already played this. We kind of like the idea of if a sequel is going to be made, it has to bring something new to the table, and if it looks more of the same, even if that is a good thing, it doesn't always translate to something we want. With these concerns that Super Mario Bros. 2 from Japan would not fly in the US, Nintendo of America still needed a sequel to their hit game, Super Mario Bros. For the US. The original Super Mario Bros. Team also worked on a game released for the Famicom Disk System. It was a tie-in with the Fuji television network. They made Doki Doki Panic. This game never released outside of Japan in its original form. During the development of this game, Miyamoto instructed his team to make it more Mario-like. Funny enough, this was the game that turned out to be America's Super Mario Bros. 2. This explains why Super Mario Bros. 2 is so different but feels like a Mario game in spirit. Doki Doki Panic, you have 4 characters to choose from, each with a unique skill, no run button this time. This game benefited at the time from being on the Famicom Disk System and that you could save your progress with all 4 characters. Going back and playing this game after growing up playing Super Mario Bros. 2 in the US, I can't help but notice the rough edges, but I can also see the origin of this game. Some of the blocks were changed, and I kinda like some of the original blocks. The slot machine game was very rough, and it got polished up in the release of Super Mario Bros. 2 in the US. The game later, at the end of the Famicom's life, got a release in Japan as Super Mario Bros. USA. This was a straight-up ROM dump from the US release. For Japanese gamers, they may not have paid much attention to this, as the Super Famicom had been out for 3 years. With the release of All-Stars, we got a 16-bit upgrade of Super Mario Bros. 2. I enjoyed these remakes. It felt like Nintendo really took the time and care in releasing these. The backgrounds in the All-Stars release really benefited in that they were fully fleshed out and not just solid colors. You could also save your progress in all of these games. It wasn't until recently that I realized that Super Mario Advance was not a straight port of the Super Mario Bros. 2 from All-Stars, but Nintendo actually mixed it up some. They made an effort to make the game a bit easier and varied up the enemies more. I would say if you played the original a lot growing up, then you might find this one interesting, as there's some changes to it that you might not be expecting, with level design and enemy placement. I thought this version was interesting, although one thing that really turned me off was the sound effects. Mostly the sound effects from the characters. They became real annoying very fast.
This is as far as you go!
I can see playing this game on a handheld, but mostly with the music off. Well, that's a look at Super Mario Bros. 2 in its many different versions. Going back these days, I enjoy the original and the All-Stars version. Lost Levels still puts up quite a challenge these days. I really enjoyed exploring the Japanese originals. Sadly, the only way to play Doki Doki Panic outside of emulation is on the Famicom Disk System. The rest have been re-released on the Wii and the Wii U Virtual Console. Well, thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe, share with your friends, and leave a comment below of what game you might like me to cover next.